Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. My name is Andres Lorente.
And I am James Rosica. And every episode on the Two Real Cinema Club, we watch two movies, a new one and an old one, and we try to connect the dots. I was listening to a podcast about Star Wars earlier today, actually. You know, this is anybody who's new to the podcast should know that I always bring the lowbrow, and you bring the highbrow. And on this podcast, they were referring to episodes of Star Wars TV shows as entertainment units. So I'm gonna start using that. So every episode on this show, we watch two entertainment units. We watch a new unit and an old unit, and then we try to draw connections between the units, maybe with wires or something like that. We also tend to find themes. So we often keep the themes. The current theme seems to be school, so we've seen a lot of school films lately, but
That's
also
true.
we are naturally drawn to donkey-based films.
Yeah.
Not sure how that happens, so I will be surprised if there isn't some donkey discussion at some point during the episode. That's how we roll.
We usually manage to get a donkey in there somewhere. We've gotten donkeys into station wagons, donkeys into podcasts. We can jam a donkey in just about anywhere. Is that the Super Mario reference? You had what is Donkey Kong?
Well, I was just going to comment that this is episode 64.
Oh, yeah. Woo!
Yeah, and everybody knows Super Mario didn't really get good, until number 64. So I have a good feeling about this episode.
Good. We were also talking a little bit about how we perhaps are psychoanalysts. I mean, you've got a medical degree. I don't. Oh, my father was a psychiatrist, so maybe that explains a lot.
Now it all begins to add up, yeah.
And I just say that because I did have a dream/nightmare about Beau is Afraid recently. And I know everybody hates to hear about other people's dreams, so I'm going to keep this fast. But for some reason, I was in a cab with Joaquin Phoenix.
Right.
And then it was just strange because then more siblings of Joaquin Phoenix, but they all looked just like Joaquin Phoenix. So I just had more and more Joaquin Phoenixes come into the cab. But then we switched forms of transportation so that then I was in sort of
Please
like
be a donkey. Is it a donkey?
There are no donkeys.
Oh.
That would have made the dream much more pleasant. But we did get to a bus full of Joaquin Phoenixes and me, and then a train. And finally, we're on this sort of boat. And I think we were in New York City. And we ended up in the boat captain just sort of parked the ferry, and everyone got off. And I had no way of getting back home. And all the Joaquin Phoenixes disappeared. And it was just, I think it summed up that film pretty well. I just ended up lost, far from home with too much Joaquin Phoenix. And I mean, that's such a literal nightmare. There's no analysis needed. So it's a good thing that we are psychoanalysts who don't really need to do too much analysis.
I was assuming that surely River Phoenix would get in the cab at some point.
No. They all look just like Joaquin Phoenix. In fact, I barely remember River Phoenix at all.
You had the wrong Phoenix.
Yeah, I did have the wrong Phoenix, yeah.
I did read some River Phoenix trivia today, actually, which is that, so sadly he died from like drinking a speedball, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
At this club in Los Angeles. But what I didn't know until I read today was that the guy who gave him the speedball was the lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, God. Anthony Kiedis. Is it Kiedis?
Kiedis, yeah, I think so.
Oh.
Is there any significance to that? That feels like it would fit right into your dream, in fact. I'm starting to wonder whether that really happened. Did I actually read that? Perhaps that was a dream as well.
I would like to fact check that because we're essentially accusing someone of murder. So I think maybe we need to get the facts on that. I'm going to stop that conversation right here. I think.
Okay. So I forgot to say allegedly at the beginning of that paragraph.
Exactly. Yes. Ooh, maybe we should move on to the socials.
Quick to the socials. Do the socials. Quick.
You can find us on Twitter at Two Real Cine Club at twitter.com. Cine is Cine. It's kind of like a European thing. Instagram, Two Real Cinema Club at Instagram.com. Read the blog at tworealcinemaclub.com. Or be like Tom Hanks and write us emails to tworealcinemaclub@gmail.com. You can let us know what you think, ask questions, offer us sponsorships. We're always interested in new sponsorships. You could demand a refund, but you're not going to get too much because I don't think you have put too much into it, listener. We provide these services to you for free. Tell us what you like, what you hate, or what you're going to do with our bank account details when we hand them over to you to help you smuggle many millions of dollars out of Nigeria.
Because that's how those emails work.
Everyone still has those cousins in Nigeria, don't they? Please leave us a review if you can. Find the time and the energy. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, or wherever else you get your podcast entertainment units.
Oh,
nice touch.
It's
James.
catching on.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, do you want to say anything about the films that we're about to talk about?
So we are going back to school yet again, aren't we? With two, like they are 7th grade films, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure that 7th grade means the same thing in the States that it does here. We don't really have middle school, particularly in the UK, but this is two films about girls who are 11 going on 12.
Yeah.
The new entertainment unit is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which is currently on the side of all of the buses around where I live in South London.
Oh, good.
And then we're comparing it to 1995's Welcome to the Dollhouse.
Yeah, so I mean, it'd be safe to say they're both preteen films, maybe?
Yeah, I think, that's a word, isn't it? Yeah.
Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Longish title with both a question and an answer. Features young actress Abby Ryder-Fortson.
Now, I recognize, I don't know, you probably will not have seen her in this, but I recognized her. And it was only after watching the film I found out that she was in the original Ant-Man film.
Oh.
So I think that is what introduced her to the big screen.
So she's actually an experienced actress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Didn't we see Haley Joel Osment in 2 different ways recently? Or we mentioned him because we saw him as a young Forrest Gump, I guess, or young Forrest Gump Jr.
Yeah.
All right. So the child actors are coming back to star in feature films with people like Rachel McAdams, who plays her mother, Kathy Bates plays her grandmother, and Benny Safdie is her father, and Abby plays the titular Margaret. This film is directed by Kelly Freeman Craig from her script.
Yeah, Freeman Craig, that right?
Maybe.
Having watched Dune recently, I feel like maybe it's not Freeman. Maybe it is Freeman then. Yes, maybe I'm just interpolating Freeman from having had far too much Dune.
Let's call her Kelly Craig. That might be disrespectful, though. So Kelly Freeman Craig. Freeman Craig.
Just sort of blur over it, and we'll correct it in the edit.
Her script was based on the beloved teen book by Judy Blume. I guess they call that. There's another word for that.
Is it like it's not YA, is it?
It is YA. Youth.
Is it YA? It's YA.
Young adult.
Now, in keeping with the theme of the Two Real Cinema Club, book club.
Oh yeah.
I've read the book this week. I got. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, the book. I read it this week.
Oh, good. I read it 40 plus years ago.
Whoa.
So I read it too before the podcast, Jim. You're not the only one who does that. But it is a great book, and I think it's a really beloved book in American culture. So I think that has a sort of a role in how well accepted the film has been so far, I think.
Fine. I think it's completely unknown here. Actually.
Oh, okay.
I think it's very much an American book.
Yeah.
Well, do you want to tell us what the story is?
I do, absolutely. The film opens with Margaret having just a great time at summer camp, but when she arrives home to her apartment, she learns that she is moving from New York City to suburban New Jersey with her parents. They are played by Rachel McAdams and Benny Safdie, and they'll be leaving her grandmother, who lives in the same neighborhood or same part of the city, played by Kathy Bates. When faced with these massive changes coming just as puberty arrives, Margaret, who is really not religious, starts talking to God, and only sort of later learns her parents are very non-devout. Father's Jewish on that side, and mother's quite Christian. Or grew up very Christian, I should say. She generally prays or talks to God about larger breasts, menstrual cycles, boys, friends, and all those classic preteen necessities. When she gets to New Jersey, she quickly befriends a neighbor, Nancy, and her club of friends who will talk yet more about teen things, but they will never wear socks. It's a club that doesn't wear socks for some reason. Margaret's mom, Barbara, is an artist who now has more time to become involved with things like the Parent-Teacher Association and homemaking. But but the changes in her life, they sort of begin to mirror Margaret's changes as well. So they're sort of going through this period of transition together. Barbara takes Margaret to buy a training bra or growing bra. They had a certain name for it that she doesn't yet need. But if you want to be in that club of girls, you have the no sock club. You have to have bras.
Well, they do use socks, don't they? But just not on their feet, don't they? Because they're desperate to fill the bras that they've been forced to buy to be a member of the club.
I think you've made a good connection there. That's where the socks go. Oh. Religion is a topic in this film, sort of a subplot around Margaret trying out various services, looking for answers, both with her grandmother. She goes to a synagogue. She goes to some churches with some of her club friends. But she learns sort of the hard way that Barbara's overzealous parents have ostracized their daughter for marrying a Jewish man. So there's all this backstory that comes out in the film, even as Margaret's talking to God regularly. She likes a neighbor boy, Moose, who's very nice and hardworking, but he's not as desirable as Philip Leroy, who Margaret kisses at a party where they're playing Spin the Bottle and 2 Minutes in the Closet. These are games that most Americans grew up with. James, how about you? Do you know those games?
I mean, if we're talking about British closets, then there's no way that more than one person would possibly fit in a wardrobe in the United Kingdom.
Yeah,
and Spin the Bottle didn't work. We all drank fizzy pop out of cans. I don't think you can spin a can. So no, neither. So I think Kiss Chase was the game that is the closest equivalent.
Really? Oh, wow.
For a British upbringing. And I was far too well behaved a boy, or I was far too boring, so I never got to play Kiss Chase. I'm sure, as a boy, I would have loved to have done, but it wasn't the done thing. I couldn't even tell you what the rules of Kiss Chase are, but I think there is some chasing, and then if you get caught, either you get kissed or you have to kiss somebody else, or the kiss is the reward for not being caught. I didn't play it. I don't know.
Oh, boy. Well, we have a lot of crap to store in the United States. We have large closets, and the clever ones among us try and extend 2 minutes in the closet to maybe 3, 4, 5, just to enhance the experience. Or the entertainment unit. By the end of the film, Margaret has written this report on religion for her teacher. And ultimately, Margaret sort of decides that religion makes people fight when it claims to make them better people. And she sort of claims that there's nobody up there, just me. So she's not hearing from God and gets a little frustrated. I think there are a lot of great free-thinking thoughts for a young girl and for a film. I really like that part of this film. A prayer is sort of answered by the end of the film, just before Margaret returns to camp for the summer, which provides this bookend for the whole film. So that's a summary.
I mean, that's a good... having read the book more recently than you,
gotcha.
It is also a good summary of the book.
Oh, good.
This film, I don't know how well you remember the book, but I read the book just after seeing the film, and the film is very slavishly adherent to the book.
Yeah.
It's utterly the film of the book, with one main difference.
Remind me what that is. That would be helpful for me. I remember the book. I remember loving the book, but I don't remember the book well. And the things that I remember are the classic things like we must increase our bust and that sort of thing. So
right.
What's the main difference?
The main difference is that the book is, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Yeah.
Whereas the film is, Are You There, God? It's us, Margaret. Oh, and Margaret's mum, Barbara.
Oh.
In the book, Barbara, played by Rachel McAdams, who is basically, I suppose, the only proper above-the-line name actor. Kathy Bates is a proper above-the-line actor, but she's not in the film nearly as much, I would say, as Rachel McAdams.
No.
In the film, Barbara has her own subplots, and Barbara is a real proper character. Whereas in the book, Barbara is largely a cipher.
Okay.
I mean, in the book, she's like, I don't know whether you ever got the Charlie Brown cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you must have done.
Peanuts.
And in the animated Charlie Brown cartoon, adults would appear, but they would just appear as feet, and their voices would be garbled and unintelligible. And that's kind of what the grown-ups are like in the book, Are You There, God? The grown-ups kind of exist, but you know what? No one pays very much attention to the exact things they say. It's Margaret's story, and it's about Margaret's point of view.
Yeah.
Whereas, there's a lot more of Margaret's mum Margaret's mom, sorry, let me get that right, in the film.
Mum's a flower.
I came away and I think you felt the same way as well, really enjoyed this film, but I did come away noting that it's a really small film, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like a small film about small, commonly lived, believable moments.
Yep.
In the life of a, pretty ordinary, sweet, normal seeming 11-year-old girl.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of the movie, if you told me it was a TV movie, I would believe you. And that doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
It's something, sometimes it looks nice. The cinematography is largely workmanlike. So the film is never really kind of deeply sort of widescreen cinematic. But then I think that's fine. Not every worthwhile story has to be sort of huge and in CinemaScope. It's a small, intimate little story shot in an appropriate small way. And I think that works.
Yeah, you might call it a chamber film. That's what they used to say, but I think it has more locations than that, and I think it's deeper than a chamber film. I loved this film. I absolutely adored it. I saw it with my wife and stepdaughter, and they were shocked how much I liked this film, because usually I would normally hate something like this. I love this film, and I think, again, it is part of my youth, having read the book. And I just think that you're right. It's done I don't want to say simply, it's done very deftly, but it's also it's straightforward. It's clear filmmaking. I don't think there's really a misstep in the entire film. It's just sort of efficient. There's nothing showy. This is just great storytelling with great clarity and process. It really builds upon, each moment builds upon the next or builds upon the last and takes you to just logical conclusions. I just thought it was really, really well done. Very nice filmmaking about nice people and nice stuff.
Yeah.
This is an 11-year-old who likes to spend time with her grandmother. There are no violent scenes. There are no really ugly confrontations. If there is an ugly confrontation, it's about sort of just religious strife and religious rifts in the family. And I thought that was appropriate. I just thought everything was just really well done.
It is. It is nice. It's kind of nice with a capital N.
Yeah, definitely capital.
But it is a nice film, and it was an enjoyable, hour and a half. Sitting watching the story.
Yeah.
I think should we ring the spoiler bell so we can go into some slightly more specific.
I think that's an excellent time.
Yeah.
Are you there, God? Ring the spoiler bell.
Give us a sign. Well, I would call that a sign.
That's God right there.
Sign that I need to get my ears syringed or something. That was very loud. Okay. So there's one fascinating thing I learned off the back of seeing the film and then reading the book was that I was shocked to learn that Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, the book, was in the 1990s in the top 100 most banned books in US libraries.
Wow.
I learned this. I was thinking, but what? Why?
Why?
What? I mean, I was trying to figure out what aspect of the book would get it banned.
Does the book go into the religious research?
It does. Yes,
so I think it's
does.
I
wonder whether it is the religious thing. I made like a little sort of short list of what I thought might be the controversies. I mean, is it the idea that children might be curious about periods? Or they might be curious about kissing or something like that. I feel like, really, does that get a book banned? I was wondering whether it was the notion that one could reasonably expect to choose a religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was thinking, well, is that a controversial enough idea? And this is not that the book was threatened with being banned in 1970 when it was set and written. These are in the mid-90s. This is kind of relatively recent era.
Wow.
I was wondering whether it's because the fundamentalist grandparents, who are kind of very deeply Christian, are not portrayed as kind of wonderful angels.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not portrayed as particularly bad people. The book is probably slightly kinder to them than the film. I mean, the film isn't terribly bad about them.
I think the menstruation, the reflection on sex, these things are sort of cover for banning the book on religious means, I think.
So do you think no pun intended, fundamentally it was the religious subtext and not the kind of the menstruation subtext
Probably.
that would get it banned.
I think if you wrap it all together, it's enough for conservatives not to like the film or the book. Yeah, probably.
I'd had a look at some of the other books that were challenged
Okay.
in libraries during that decade.
Yeah.
So you can read online what were the most challenged books, and American Psycho was one. Well, fair enough, okay. But also, so some of the titles, I don't know most of these books, but the titles: Heather Has Two Mommies. There's a book called Daddy's Roommate.
Yeah.
The Color Purple was one of the most commonly requested books to be removed. And there's a book called A Day No Pigs Would Die.
Yeah.
And then, even shockingly, there's a book which is called What's Happening to My Body, a Growing Up Guide for Parents and Daughters. You go, who wants to ban that? It's like people want to ban books about being gay, being vegetarian, books about rights for women and people of colour, books about menstruation. Are these all of these things really have to be banned? It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. I think they're all somewhat controversial, I guess, for some folks in the United States. But I think here you've got a combination, which makes it probably more likely to get banned.
Like, thank God there wasn't a conversation about vegetarianism in the book. They would have been burning them in the streets, wouldn't they? Yeah. I can't imagine why that would be banned. I mean, and the film, as you said, very close to the book, but there hasn't been any controversy around the film as far as I've heard. Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, certainly none here, but then I don't think I would be interested to find out whether there is a register of books that people have tried to ban from UK libraries. I have never heard of this, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It may well.
I'm sure there's some efforts too, but I bet they don't get nearly as far as they do here. Yeah. Wow.
Going back to the movie, there are some great characters here, aren't there? With terrific character moments. I jotted down some that really kind of stood out to me. I've written before on the blog about how to introduce characters. And Nancy, who is kind of Margaret's new friend when she moves to her new house, has this fantastic introduction where she appears on screen and she tells Margaret, "I live in the bigger house down the street."
Yep.
And that single line and the way she delivers it, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about her character for the next kind of hour.
And her mother too, who does feature in the film too. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's skillful and clever. It's very well done, isn't it?
It's very well done. I was just going to say scenes, as characters are introduced wonderfully, but I think it's the addition of scenes, the accumulation of these great moments that also plays into that. But obviously, those scenes need characters. So, who are some other characters that jumped out for you?
Well, the other thing I made a little note in my notebook about is when Barbara, Margaret's mother, after she's had this big argument with her parents, and it seems like that her parents, who haven't been in her life for a long time, are not going to be in her life once again.
Yeah.
There's just this silent scene where she has a table extender, which makes her dining room table bigger, and she is putting this table extender away. Because she's not anticipating needing it again, and that's a beautifully written, really simple scene of telling the story through action.
Yeah,
just excellent, fantastic.
Yeah,
and there are some scenes with Margaret's mother where it feels a little bit on the nose. There's another scene with no dialogue where she spots a bird through the window.
Yep.
And decides, quick, I'm an artist, I'm going to quickly paint this bird. And then the bird flies away before she has the chance to finish her study. And, and that's like a slightly overplayed, sort of over-dramatized statement about how, time is fleeting and, life is slipping away from you and you must, grab the opportunities while they're here.
Yeah.
Whereas the thing about putting away the table extender was much more subtle and a much better written, conceived scene.
Yeah, the bird scene comes at a moment where she's sort of losing her life as an artist, because I think she taught in the city. She was an art teacher, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
And then because of the husband's higher paying job, she's going to be more of a homemaker. So she sort of loses touch with her art and becomes more involved in parent-teacher associations and volunteering. And that scene is on the nose. It's one of the weaker moments in what is otherwise a pretty tight film. there were so many just touchstone moments of like the tampon buying scene is fantastic. It's really well done. It's acted beautifully by the young actors. Buying a bra, very awkward, very good scene. The entire party with the 6th or 7th graders, I thought it was great. And it's this wonderful first kiss scene with the class stud in the closet, and then it cuts right to Joy to the World being sung in a Christmas mass choir or something. That it's just a really well done stuff like that. So I think just there are moments that a lot of us as Americans, we certainly had these moments, and they're just great touchstone moments for any young person. And I think for all the adults watching, it hit home. It was very, very nostalgic, and I think very emotional for me.
Right. It's cute. But for all these good moments, I was slightly frustrated by the sheer number of strands that are sort of picked up and left. So like there's this plot strand about Margaret having a project about religion, in school, and she says, I'm going to go and investigate some different religions, and she does go to the church, and she goes to the synagogue, and she sort of investigates it, and she talks to God about it, but it doesn't really kind of return to the school project. We don't really see her present it to the teacher.
No,
it's kind of it's picked up and then it's sort of dropped. In the same way that when we meet the school teacher for the first time, and he's this kind of nice but slightly unsure of himself guy, and he says, "Well, this is my first year of teaching."
Yep.
And in that scene, I felt like we were promised a little bit of business about, well, how will he do?
Yeah.
Will he be too strict? Will he be too lax? Will he drop the ball? Will he mess it up? Will he bungle it? What will happen?
Yeah.
And then he appears pretty rarely in the rest of the film and doesn't really put a foot wrong.
No.
We don't see very much of him until the end of the movie when Margaret says, "You're a great teacher."
Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, great. I'm sure you are, but we didn't see you do any of that. I felt like there were a few promises made that weren't really delivered on.
Yeah. Well, I think that the film is so laser focused on just the core characters and the smaller story that we were sort of talking about, that it just sort of introduces a couple of things, but doesn't focus too much on them. The teacher does get lost a little bit. As does, I think there's another school project where Margaret has to work with some other students, and that doesn't go anywhere, as I recall, either way. I mean, it sort of there's some friction that comes between a couple of characters as a result of that project, but it's a similar thing where it doesn't really go anywhere. And I think it's just laser focused on this one, really central story, and it's not a film that's gonna wander it doesn't wander too deep into the other strands.
I mean, I did find myself towards the end of the film kind of waiting for the big thing to happen, which doesn't happen. I was kind of waiting for the grandmother to die, or the father to die, or the mother to get cancer, or the dad to lose his job, and they have to move back in with the grandmother. Like the big event, and it doesn't come. And I'm fine with that. It's almost sort of brave that there isn't this kind of big dramatic event. I think
it does come, but it's for us. As adults, it's not a big dramatic event, but you have to put yourself in the shoes of the 11 or 12-year-old girl who's the protagonist of this story. And for me, a great sign of success in this film is that as a 55-year-old man, I was brought to tears of joy and happiness with the onset of a menstrual cycle. I mean, that gave me such relief and such a good laugh. I thought it was great. And so I think you have to look at it through the protagonist's eyes. That is a big event. That was the big event. And she'd heard so much about menstrual cycles and periods, and their friends are, telling whether or not they got it or did they not get it. One friend lies about getting it. So I think it comes right at that time, and I think is it right before she goes off to camp at the very end? It's one of the last scenes.
Yeah.
And her mother's there to share it with her, and she's crying, and then I'm crying in the audience. I thought it was just there was this crazy catharsis that I was not expecting. And I just thought it was a great sign of success. I thought, wow, this film worked. It worked on me. I'm a sucker.
Oh, man. Well, for Kelly Fremon Craig to have heard this, she would be delighted to hear.
She's a listener of the pod for sure. She's already heard it.
I expect she will be sending us an email, yes, to tworealcinemaclub@gmail.com any moment now. I'll tell you what I wrote in my notebook here. I wrote, "This movie is like a big hug from a beloved auntie at Christmas."
Yeah. Yeah.
I wrote, which is what it's like. But then underneath I wrote, but Auntie doesn't bite, and neither does this film.
Yeah. And I think I thought that was fine, honestly. I don't think we have too many films like this. We probably don't have enough films like this. It was a good-looking film. The colors were great, very reminiscent of the whole era, because this is early 1970s, and I was a kid at that time.
It's quite brown, isn't it, and tan?
Yeah, it's great. But I think you're right. There are no secrets that are kept for very long in this film. Everything is very surface. There's not a ton of subtext in this film. But again, I think that's just the adolescent mind. It fits the protagonist perfectly. So I think that fact, I think that really suits the story very well.
I did ask my daughter, as a focus group of one, I said, she's 15 now, so a little bit older than the characters in this film. But I was saying, when you were younger, were you all kind of, you and your friends all worried about who's going to get their period first, and we were always talking about, what's going to happen, who's going to get it first. And she said, no. But I don't know whether that's just something that British people would never talk about, or maybe it's something that a 15-year-old British girl would never tell her father. It's one of those two.
That's possible.
For all that I loved this film, I probably loved it nearly as much as you. I think not quite as much. I am still going to pick up the phone and drop a quarter to phone the Cliche Squad.
Cliche Squad.
A quarter? What the hell are you talking about?
Quarter? Is that right? Did you drop it? Is it a quarter? How much does it cost to phone the police? Is it free? It's probably free, isn't it?
I don't think we have them anymore. I think you just pick up your cell phone and you call.
Oh, yes, that's true.
But I got to say, I loved the phones in this film, and it really reminded me of some of our discussions not so long ago. I think, the phones reflect the era, but they don't get in the way of the story. I think that cell phones really can take you away from the present. In life and in film, and that the phones don't get in the way. You could hang up on someone. I think Barbara hangs up on Sylvia, Margaret's grandmother, at one time, and you really can't hang up on anyone anymore, because they're going to text you right back or just keep calling you. But calls used to sort of cost money, or you couldn't just make them at any time. You had to think about it. But a long distance call, she hangs up on her on a long distance call, and that's, in the day and age, you would pay for it. But 25 cents, I think, was later day payphones in this country. I think it started out as 10 cents when I was a kid.
10 cents.
Yeah.
So in 1970, I would have been dropping 10 cents to phone the Cliche Squad.
But the Cliche Squad, basically a free service, I think.
They're not free enough, in my opinion. I think they should be a lot freer. So I'm going to suggest for my. I have written down 3 little cliches, which I think do deserve discussion. That the mother who keeps burning dishes in the oven. It's like this kind of this well-known shorthand for mother not coping.
Yeah.
So every meal she takes out of the oven is burned. I feel like I've seen that a lot before.
Yeah. Okay.
And I wrote this in my notes, there were quite a lot of needle drops in this movie. I didn't know what that was until last year. I had to look it up. But it's when you have a cut in a movie and you cut to the beginning of a well-known song, and the song does most of the work of either telling you the story or setting the scene or kind of setting the tone. I think they do that a little bit too much. There's a fun soundtrack, a lot of great songs. But sometimes I slightly worry that when you've got the money for a great soundtrack, you're relying on it a little bit too heavily to tell you the story.
To do the work for you, yeah. That's good.
And then my third cliche for the squad is it's something that we've seen very recently, even in Close. Is a school movie that is structured around the shape and size of the school year. So, it begins at the beginning of the school year, and the story continues to 1 year of academic achievement, and then, and at the end of the movie, it kind of sort of ends with this. It's almost like a look to camera and a sort of, wait till you see what next year has in store kind of look. I feel like it's the obvious step to take with any movie about children in a school, but it's so obvious. I feel like maybe we could sidestep it. I mean, Kes didn't feel the need to stretch itself over one school year. Yeah, neither does every other school movie. Please.
Yeah, I think it's convenient for writers as well as for viewers, so that's why people do it. I think, but I hear you. Those are good ones. I have a couple.
Ah, drop those 10 cents on me.
Yeah. God, can we make this just one call? It'll save us some money. I don't have to go.
Yes, it's at a nickel, isn't it? 10 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll save a nickel. Yes.
Oh, boy.
Back in 1970, that was a lot of money.
I thought you were in Florida. A nickel is 5 cents. A dime
is it? Oh,
is
no.
10 cents. Yeah.
But the word dime sounds like the word 5. So a dime is 10 cents.
It's 10 cents, and it's
Oh,
a
man,
smaller.
I'm never going to get this.
It's a smaller coin than the 5-cent piece, which is a larger coin of less value.
Oh, I'm such an oaf. Okay,
And
right.
it all should be decommissioned. There's no reason for us to be using coins anymore, at least not coins of that denomination. Any hoozle. For me, I think both films this week have this one adolescent girl who's ahead of her time, ahead of the class's time, at least in rumor and innuendo. That's kind of a cliche where there's always this one who's already kissed a boy or even gone farther than that. And I think like the girl gangs and popular groups and clubs, we're going to see that in both films this week. The messy artist life, I think that was sort of the mother's story to a certain extent. And something we've seen in a couple films recently, I think it was The Substitute, these sort of incomplete apartments and houses as symbols for lives in transition.
Right, yes. Yeah, you're right.
Those are all kind of cliches that I saw here. But one thing, I don't know if I've said this on the pod before, but cliches in general, they start somewhere, and Judy Blume's work is seminal. Can you use the word seminal on a podcast? Is that appropriate?
Yeah.
Let's move on.
I got that pun.
Her work is very early in the world of cliches, I suppose, for film. I mean, I'm sure they go back very far into the, before the talkies even. But I think, these are, as you said, a lot of the stuff is just coming right out of the book. So they're touchstones. I mean, cliches are not always bad. They're kind of touchstones and shorthand for the audience and for the writer to communicate some sort of idea. So I wasn't particularly offended by any of those cliches. I expect some cliches in a film like this. And sometimes it's just, it's like clear writing or clear symbolism. So I wouldn't harp on it too much, but it was a worthy 10-cent call to the Cliché Squad.
Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Well, let's have a break, and then we'll come back with a slightly different view of seventh grade in Welcome to the Dollhouse. Let's see what that got to say. Yeah.
Two Wheel Cinema Club is not yet brought to you by Blue Yeti microphones, but it should be soon. At Two Reel, we exclusively use Blue Yetis. Sure.
We do.
Yeah. Sure, we've tried the Shure 57 and Shure 58, the loveless lavaliers, the phony Sonys, the goddamn Tascams, but none of them perform at the level of the Blue Yeti. And none of them allow aspiring podcasters, artists, or actual useful people to plug headphones directly into the microphone for close monitoring and phantom power. That's right, no batteries. The Blue Yetis are powered by the device used to record them. Furthermore, they look great and rekindle memories of the microphones in the old days of radio. James goes with the more antiseptic, hospital-ready stainless steel kind of gray, while I chose the goth wannabe wrought iron black. More importantly, they sound great because of features that allow unidirectional voice recording as you hear me now, duo-directional for realistic dyad-style dialogues, perfect for your human potential and self-help work, or full-on omnidirectional settings to record those home jam sessions that you probably shouldn't be recording in the first place. If Blue Yeti microphones can make a couple of grizzled, old, know-nothing, whiny, negative Nelson screenwriters like us sound good, imagine what they can do for your podcasts, school assignments, garage band recordings, video calls, or vanity projects. When I tell people that we record the pod from opposite sides of the Atlantic Ocean, they just can't believe it. Well, we do. And the reason we sound good is simple. and has nothing to do with the underinformed analyses and novice opinions you've come to expect from us, and all to do with the handsome microphones that hide the unsightly faces of the men you don't know and don't love. These microphones automatically filter what you don't want and feature what you do. Blue Yeti. In truth, neither Blue nor Yeti, yet the microphone of choice for Tom Hanks and the Two Reel Cinema Club. Nothing but the best, for the best, and the rest. That's how Blue Yeti rolls, walking the walk while talking and recording the talk. Blue Yeti.
That's good. They got a pass for that.
We are Blue Yeti ready.
But to be fair, whenever I'm making jam in the kitchen, I never record myself.
You're a musician. So, yeah, jamming. Do you guys jam?
That's a jamming. Now I get it.
That's a jam session. And we are back to middle school or junior high school, or what is it? First form, second form? I don't know what it's called over there to the UK.
Yeah, I think it is like well, it was first year when I was at school.
Okay.
I think it's year 7 now.
Okay.
This is junior high, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah. Yes,
Right, which is a
probably again
completely alien concept.
Yep, similar to Margaret, 6th grade, 11 years old. Welcome to the Dollhouse. And why, James, are we going back to the Dollhouse?
Do you have any other questions for me, Counsel?
Oh, tell me why.
Tell me why.
So I saw this film at the cinema originally in 1995, and I remember kind of enjoying it at the time, or at least, at least it made an impression on me.
Yep.
It's Todd Solondz's second feature.
Yeah.
His first feature is called Fear, Anxiety, and Depression. I haven't seen it. I don't think many people have.
I have seen it.
Oh.
Yeah. Didn't like it.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't wait to find out whether you also didn't like this.
I think
because this film's very much of a muchness, I think. This film was kind of overshadowed by Happiness, which was his third film, which was made a few years later, which is very more controversial than this.
Yeah.
Something about this film kind of really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And in fact, watching it again this week, I was a bit surprised at how much I recognized from that single viewing 26 years ago.
Yeah, more. Yeah.
So I remembered a lot on this rewatch, actually. So it really stuck with me. This is like just an alternative version of that same year in a girl's life that we go through in Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret.
It really
but this is the other side of the coin.
It's a great pairing as a result, though. I thought this was a brilliant match.
Apparently, the script was originally supposed to be called Faggots and Retards, I read in an interview in The Guardian, and he realised that if he called it that, it probably wouldn't sell.
Well, he's definitely he does use those words a lot in the film. This is pre-woke filmmaking. I think we should
absolutely.
make that
I
clear.
think that was kind of fair game, probably in 1995, wasn't it? I'm sure people used those words on MTV in 1995.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently, when they were shooting, the working title was Middle Child. Which also actually it's not a bad title for the film, but in the interview he suggests that makes it sound like a Disney picture. So I don't think he had huge hopes for it, and it turned out to be a festival hit. So it got picked up by Sony Pictures Classic. In the end, it made up $5 million on a budget of $800,000.
I know. I see. I love that model. Because it's brought in 5 times what it cost. That's a profitable film.
Yeah,
reasonable to make. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they didn't spend nothing on it, but they didn't spend a very great deal on it. But yeah, absolutely. Well, shall I tell you the story?
Please.
So it's 1995, and middle child Dawn Wiener is starting at junior high school. So there she is relentlessly bullied by both children and staff. And at home, it's no better. She's either ignored or chastised by her parents. She's insulted by her nerdy older brother, Mark. She's snitched on by her much-adored younger sister, Missy. So she is, the typical sad middle child. Mm-hmm. But then Mark's terrible band, so this is the older brother, his terrible, awful, dreadful band, they recruit the hot guitarist Steve from school, and everything changes. Now Dawn is convinced that she's in love. Steve ignores her, of course. Instead, she has to cope with threats of rape from her classmate, Brandon. But among all these swirling feelings of infatuation and intimidation, something else comes to the surface. And by facing her fears, Dawn finds that she may be in danger of making a real connection with someone. I feel like I should go, da, da, da.
I think so too. I'm hanging on every word on your blue Yeti microphone.
But so that that was a little like précis that I wrote after watching the film, and I'm not sure that entirely captures it, because like I think to capture the tone of this film, you need to have somebody shout faggot at you through a megaphone, for 90% of the runtime.
Yeah.
What I wrote in my notes is Dawn is the anti-Margaret, isn't she? Because in this film, nobody loves her.
Yeah.
She's just relentlessly punished and put down, isn't she? She is like a total underdog. Her nickname is Wiener Dog. She is the underdog.
Her last name's Wiener, right? And then they call her Wiener Dog.
Absolutely. And it's a great performance by Heather Matarazzo. So it's her debut. It's just as good a central performance as we see in Are You There, God?
Yeah, I agree entirely.
But she's just so put upon in this film. My God. I mean, in fact, I kind of got to the end thinking, well, just her sheer resilience in this level of abuse is really admirable. It's amazing that she can still continue to stand up and breathe and function with these many people who are just after her. There are not many admirable characters in this film, but Dawn kind of is. Yeah. Because of what she survives.
Yeah. She's sort of this abuse sponge. I mean, this is this is a hard film to watch at times because it's just it's abusive from her family, from her friends, from her community, from her teachers. There's just all this abuse, and she plays it, you're right, beautifully with this sort of great awkwardness and gawkiness, but she's strong. She's actually a very strong character. But she takes a lot of abuse, and God, Brandon just keeps saying, I'm going to rape you, I'm going to rape you. I mean, I don't know that you can do that. You can't say that in film anymore. I'm not worried about saying seminal on the podcast anymore because that was appropriate. But this, I'm going to rape you. That was, for me, that was jarring.
Yeah, it was, absolutely. It suddenly leaps out from the screen, doesn't you?
And yet I think the character you were alluding to when you went bum, bum, bum with your ellipses there, that's Brandon, isn't it?
It is. Well, we should talk about after the spoiler bell. We'll ring the spoiler. I've got two little things which I'll say before the spoiler bell, and then we'll ring it.
Sorry.
The first thing I was going to say, like apropos of the whole film, is that this is a bit of a a potential cliche squad accusation. But this film, it follows Dawn. It's absolutely Dawn's story. Yeah. Is there a scene that she's not in? I'm not sure that there is. But the film is trying to spend its whole runtime convincing you that Dawn is incredibly ugly, when actually it's pretty easy to see that underneath her thick glasses, she's actually quite pretty. She's she's a perfectly normal 11-year-old girl, and certainly not incredibly ugly. Yeah. And it's that kind of cliche squad thing, isn't it? Of you put these thick glasses on a girl and suddenly she's absolutely ugly, and everyone on screen recognizes how very ugly she is. Yeah,
that's almost the permission structure to enact all that abuse throughout the whole film, is that, she's the ugly one, so that's why we're going to tease her and belittle her without end. Yeah.
But the whole film kind of exudes this sort of 90s ennui, isn't it? The whole thing it's kind of grungy and misanthropic, and it's dirty and nasty and chaotic. Yeah. And almost all of the characters are, even Dawn in a way, are pretty much irredeemable. They're all dreadful, horrible, awful people.
Yeah, it's grim, and Solondz is so committed to the tone in this film. I really admire that. Like he's choosing something that's not really going to be popular, but full commitment to it, and that tone just goes throughout the entire film, but throughout characters and through scenes. It's just it's admirable, that commitment to tone.
It's certainly he works at it. Yeah. Let's ring the spoiler bell. And we'll talk about some of these fine details again. Here we go. And twice in one night. That's too loud. So this film is, and I'm sure it's intended to make you feel uncomfortable, but I felt uncomfortable watching this film, and part of the discomfort was its uncomfortable obsession with the sexuality of children.
Yeah.
In a way that kind of today, it feels really icky. I think it was intended to be kind of groundbreaking and honest and sort of thought-provoking at the time.
Yeah.
But looking at it from the lens of 25 years on, it just feels dirty and icky, I think. I'm not sure that it could get made today, could it, this film?
I don't think so. I agree with you. There are a lot of sort of explicit scenes involving children or young people anyway. And there's a lot of language that's quite explicit, a lot of, just moments. From early on, when Dawn goes to the bathroom at one point, when the character Lolita confronts her about her feces in the bathroom. I mean, it's just a wild scene, and I remember that scene really struck me the first time I saw it, and it didn't disappoint the next time either. Yeah, I think it's definitely it's intentionally controversial, definitely pushing buttons throughout the film, and I don't think you could get it made now. And it's very contemporary to David O. Russell's first film called Spanking the Monkey, which is very similar. So there was something going on in the mid-'90s. I mean, to me, it made sense at that time, I guess. I wasn't really offended. I was surprised that films like that were getting made. And I remember kind of enjoying this film. I like it. I think it's a good film. I liked it at the time. I was worried that I was going to hate it this time around, but I liked it this time. But I felt the same discomfort, and I like that discomfort now as an adult. I want that. But this is... it's racy. It's challenging at times. I mean, just to give you a line of dialogue, just because he's a faggot doesn't mean he's an asshole. That comes out of I think that's Dawn's line, actually. So that's the nicest character in the film speaking, and they're just gems like that throughout. So I think yeah. So both in images, in setups, in scenes, and in dialogue, it's challenging.
I've read something which made me feel even more uncomfortable after the fact, which is that I think Heather Matarazzo is actually playing a year older than she really was.
Oh, yeah.
So she says in this Guardian interview that she started junior high the year after filming the film.
Jeez, yeah.
You think, oh my God. So we're kind of used to this notion of people who are 22 actually playing 12-year-olds on screen. And
yeah.
Whereas this is kind of, a strange and discomforting inversion. Apparently, her on-screen kiss was her first kiss.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And you alluded earlier on that there's a lot of discussion about rape in the film, and in the original script, that whole scenario did end with her being raped.
Yeah.
And this film, this threat of rape is kind of played as a very, very darkly comic idea.
Yeah.
And then sort of becomes a romantic scenario. I mean, that whole constellation of kind of thoughts around the rape of children makes me extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, of
it's
course.
very uncomfortable to watch, but I guess that's the idea, isn't it?
Yeah. It's designed to agitate. I don't know if that makes it agit-pop or not, or agit-pop, but it's definitely, I think that was his mission statement. I think he definitely wanted to push buttons and make you uncomfortable. So he succeeded. You can't say that he failed.
Yep. I mean, and there are some well observed. The characters here they're larger than life, but I think they are often well observed and well written. There are a lot of memorable, satisfying scenes. Things that get stuck in my mind, like just Dawn dancing on the hood of the car when the band is rehearsing. Mm-hmm. It's just a great character moment. Or there's this family dinner where Dawn is yet again not flavour of the month, and her mother kind of divides up this cake between everybody else and doesn't give her a piece, instead gives her piece, like splits it between her siblings. Yeah, it's a simple, fairly simply written scene, but it really, really kind of gets to the core of how misanthropic all the characters in the film are. It's just so uncomfortable and horrible to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's warts and all, right? I mean, nothing's papered over. He's not hiding anything. I think for me, a lot of this stuff does kind of ring a little bit true. Certainly, growing up in the '80s or the '90s, I think maybe kids are nicer now. I don't know. Maybe we should fact check that too. But I think certainly parents are more enlightened as well, and I think kids are less nasty now than they used to be. But He's not afraid to show reality, I guess, would be the shorthand there.
I mean, when you say it's warts and all, I mean, I think it's just all warts.
It's
what you mean. I think it's just all, it's wall to wall warts, basically. It's what it's.
Yeah, all warts and nothing but warts. Yeah.
And also, I'm talking about the writing of the film is structurally there's not very much evolution for any of the characters, is there? I mean, I was thinking by the end of the film, I was kind of ticking off what happened to everybody. Steve, the hot guitarist, he just kind of disappears.
Yep.
Brandon, her sort of would-be rapist come love interest, he just runs off.
Yep.
Dawn's family, basically they're all the same. They're still horrible to her.
Yep.
Missy goes missing. Mm-hmm. So the younger sister goes missing, but and Everill's distraught about that. But nobody cares when Dawn runs off to try and find her younger sister.
Yeah. Yep.
Even after she returns, the school kids all still hate her, and they're all still laughing at her as she reads out her little statement in the assembly. I mean, it's just unending.
Yeah.
It's realistic, but it's pretty bleak, isn't it? It's a black comedy, but there's more darkness than funny, I think.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I wrote down the same thing. It's probably a very realistic ending. In some ways, I was not satisfied with the ending because everyone's sort of disappearing. But I think that last scene in the bus where they're going to Disney World, I think. Hey, you went to Disney World, didn't you?
Well, we did. You're right. We didn't sing a song on the way, though.
No.
You're right.
Yeah, so she's the message I got was that she's sort of singing, and then eventually the way the sound is done, she's sort of singing alone about being in middle school. I think she's talking about basically her middle school song or something like that. And throughout this film, she's tried to be more adult. She tried to have an adult boyfriend. She's trying to grow up fast because adolescence is so awful. But the last moment is she's just in middle school. And as you said, maybe when she was probably in elementary or primary school when she acted this. But that character is just a middle schooler. She's not nearly as adult as she thinks she is. And it probably ends up being this sort of very realistic ending. So I realized, I have no reason to be unsatisfied with this ending because I think it's real. That's the way it happens. That was her story. And if anything, it's sort of the experience that she was trying to make for herself that was less realistic because she had these dreams of being with Steve Rogers. And those scenes are kind of uncomfortable, too, because that's probably a 23-year-old actor playing 18 or something like that, right, with a 10-year-old. And, it doesn't get too out of hand, but the suggestion there, what he's trying to agitate you with, the buttons he's trying to push are definitely inappropriate and fairly explicit, not too explicit.
I was going to suggest there's a lot of connective tissue between these two films.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of quite keen to get to that analysis. But before we do that, we need to do things in order. We have to do things properly. So we ought to quickly play Who Am I?
Oh.
Who am I?
And this is one of those weeks where I can't think of a single person in Welcome to the Dollhouse that I would like to be or identify with. They're all absolutely awful. But
medical. Think, are there any medical people?
Are there any doctors? Are there doctors? Oh my God, no. What? The thing that really rang true with me was in Are You There, God? When Margaret's father, Herb, is out mowing the lawn and he cuts his hand on the lawnmower. And we don't see the act. All we see is just him kind of like lying on the ground next to the lawnmower.
Yeah.
But then he kicks the machine in retaliation. And I was thinking, oh yeah, that's exactly what I would do. If I hurt myself on the lawnmower, I would definitely give the lawnmower a good hard kick to remind it who is boss. I thought that was a very believable, realistic moment. That was me on celluloid.
Oh,
you see yourself this week?
I saw myself in Are You There, God? Because I liked the Moose character. He was a nice boy who cut lawns and things like that. And he gets overlooked by Margaret. Well, not really by Margaret, but by the other girls. And as a result, Margaret won't get too involved with him, although there's the hint of future contact between the two of them by the end of the film. But I liked Moose. Nice guy, works hard, seemed very modest and focused, and just a nice boy.
Enterprising. Did you used to cut lawns for money?
A little bit, yeah. I didn't. Until high school, anyway. Yeah. I definitely related to Moose. I think he shoveled too, didn't he? Ooh, the shoveling of the snow. Oh man, it's summertime, so I'm trying not to think about that. But yeah, I shovel snow too. So, Aspirational, though. I don't think I'm that nice, and I don't think I work that hard. So, but moose. And similarly, I want to be Steve Rogers. Handsome young man with the guitar and the long hair. I loved the band. I know you maybe didn't like the Quadratics too much. I think they're supposed to be geeky, but I love that sort of klezmer kind of rock feel. It's clarinet, keyboard, and drums, to be clear, until Steve Rogers joins the band with the electric guitar. But I thought their songs were very funny, and the anniversary song was great. So I'm very aspirational this week. I want to be the nice guy Moose, but I also want to be the kind of teen bad boy Steve Rogers.
Now, I have to ask, klezmer, is that a word you've just made up? Is that a recognized actual word?
No, that is the music of the Jewish people, very like accordion heavy, and a lot of clarinet, and kind of almost polka-like. It's a polka-like music, probably originated in Israel. Yeah.
I thought it was some kind of post-portmanteau word where you'd taken a little bit of the word clarinet and a bit of the word drum, and like a bit of the word keyboard, and you'd somehow squish them into one word.
Oh no, it's I love listening to klezmer, so I think they kind of hit it. It's very geeky for a bunch of high schoolers to be in a klezmer band, but that's essentially what they are. And then Steve comes in, and I think it works really well. I love I love the music in the film. I mean, I think they're both simple films in a way. If we can move on to the synthesis of the two, I mean, I think the storylines are not super complicated. They're focused on a fairly limited number of characters in both cases, but they're both really very efficiently made. And again, I don't want to use simply again. I think that seems disrespectful, but they're very clearly made, and there are things in Dollhouse that really struck me as being super smart filmmaking. So Solondz really seems like a sharp guy, and
right.
He's committed to that tone that we talked about, but he does things like the blocking is, I think, intentionally very rigid. There's not a lot of movement at that dining table, for example. And it just seems like smart, low-budget filmmaking. You don't want to be sitting there shooting things again and again. And the caricature kind of writing for some of the characters also, I think, helps in that way. It just makes easier acting. Like, I don't think a lot of those actors were established at that time. If you look at the IMDb credits, there are a couple of people who've actually gone on and acted quite a bit since then, but I don't think he's working with a super experienced cast at that time. And he's working with a lot of young kids, too. And I think just writing very clear lines and almost caricature stuff and just really rigid blocking, I think it just makes shooting a cheap film much easier and working with an inexperienced group a lot easier. And it shows in the film to me. And I just think he did a brilliant job. And just a lot of the work with the extras, also makes it look like a bigger budget production. Like he's got kids walking by in the cafeteria in such a great way. And the kids in the cafeteria are brilliant. I mean, so I think you're taking these, a few set piece scenes. The anniversary shot really quite brilliantly. And it looks more than an $800,000 film. Today I think it would cost a lot more to make that. And most people are going to overspend on something like that. But I think
because these days, like those big crowd scenes, like in the school assembly hall, they would do that digitally, wouldn't they? Rather than pay a bunch of teenagers to hang around on a Saturday afternoon to sit in a.
But those cafeteria moments, they have. He's probably got 80, 90, 100 people in there at least.
Yeah.
So I think it's very just resourcefully shot, really well made film for the money, and I think. I mean, I'm sure the Margaret budget was. I saw $30 million or something like that. It was an estimated budget, and it's not to do the same kind of success. It's got to make $150 million, whereas Todd Solondz made $5 million, and that's a successful film. So I just think it's really smart. They're both really smart, and I've already talked about Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, in terms of just how simple and focused that story is. And I think they both benefit from that. These are both good films in my mind. This is a great pairing, and I think they're both good films.
I mean, neither of them is kind of, they're not arch or kind of elliptical, are they? I see what you mean. They are just kind of straightforward.
Yeah.
I read down my little notes here about, I feel like I say this every week, they're two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
these films. So the protagonists, they're both girls. They're the same ages, going through kind of the same life changes. And kind of doing it all a bit too soon for my liking as well.
Yeah.
But I'm an old man, or what do I know? I think the big difference between the films, really, so they cover similar subject matter. It's the way that they view their protagonists and their worlds, I think. So, Are You There, God? And Welcome to the Dollhouse. Both films, I think, like their central protagonists. I think both of the films center the film around them properly. There's no controversy about whose story it is. They know whose story it is, and they know who to point the camera at. But in Are You There, God? Margaret has agency, whereas in Welcome to the Dollhouse, Dawn does not. Whatever Dawn does, whether she's good or bad, whether she behaves herself or not, whether she does what her parents ask or not, whether she goes to rescue her sister or not, she's vilified no matter what she does.
Yeah.
She's made fun of. No choice she makes seems to have any material effect on her life, on her future. Mm-hmm. Whereas on the other hand, Margaret is kind of, she's taken seriously by her parents and by her friends. She makes choices, and the choices have effects and results. People are interested in the choices that she makes, and they want to encourage her to make her own choices. Yeah. It's funny that Are You There, God? Feels like a much more modern film, even though it is set 25 years before Dollhouse. I mean, Dollhouse is such a 90s film, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just, this is the 90s. Welcome to the Dollhouse hates life. It hates people. It's just full of hopelessness and misanthropy.
Yeah.
The war on drugs is what the backdrop to that movie is. It has a picture of Reagan on the wall in the background. Whereas Are You There, God? It kind of just feels more modern and more genuine. Seriously cares about children and society. It wants Margaret to find a place in the world. Whereas in Welcome to the Dollhouse, Dawn has already found a place in the world for herself. The place for her is in a falling down shack called the Special People Club.
Oh yeah,
and everybody in the film wants to dismantle it. What I think these films really underline, and I've probably touched on this before, is the way that the world changed on September the 11th. I think that's what these two films are about when you see them side by side. So before 9/11, there was a kind of detached ennui, and then after 9/11 happened, suddenly the world was a little bit more earnest and serious again, and we were kind of yearning for more certainty. I think that's what I'm putting in my essay. I think that. We're looking at the same events, but from two sides of that millennial moment. Yeah, and that's what's changed. I think.
In both films, there's actually the director has a lot of sympathy and sensitivity for the protagonists. I think both of these films are ultimately about how difficult pubescence and adolescence are. Whether you're in a great environment, a very supportive environment, or an unsupportive and very nasty environment. I think that's it. I think that Todd Solondz really does believe in Dawn. I think she's a real character. She's going through a lot more of an abusive childhood or early adulthood than Margaret does. But I think he still cares about that character. And you're just, again, you are seeing the two sides of the same coin. Corn, boy.
Two sides of the same corn.
Does corn have two sides? Oh my God, I just blew my own mind. No, I think coins have two sides, and I think we're seeing that here. I think those are just difficult years. And, Margaret's situation is, for her, it's just as difficult as Dawn's situation is, I suppose. It's just hard times, and you just have to get through it because you're just no longer a child. You're not an adult. It's just this weird age. And, what is it, the 70s, and I think Dollhouse is supposed to be set right around that time, right? Early 90s?
I got the feeling it's happening during 1995. I think so. I felt contemporaneous.
Yeah. So I think in any age, it tells us that you sort of whatever year, whatever millennia, whatever decade, that time of life is just going to be difficult. And I think both directors really care about their characters in that way.
Good pairing, I think. I think they work together.
Excellent pairing.
Excellent pairing. Well, we have just got time to talk about what else is playing at this theatre.
Do you hear like a lawnmower or a leaf blower or something, or is that on mine?
Is that not just "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret" in the background?
I think
there's a lot of lawn mowing and leaf blowing in that, isn't there?
It's my blue Yeti, not quite filtering through the bad stuff. I think it's my neighbor's.
It's such a good microphone that it picks up absolutely everything happening in you.
Is it
that thing you were saying about how even though we're on opposite sides of the Atlantic, we can still record the podcast? That's because the microphone is so sensitive.
I think I have to close a window or something. Hold on.
Right.
I think that's better.
Your microphone is so good I could actually hear you closing the window there as well. This is fantastic.
These guys have got to sponsor us. Blue Yeti again. we're talking about you right here, right now.
Can't believe we're doing this for free.
I'm hoping, the AI is going to pick it up, and I think their artificial intelligence is going to tell them about us.
That's how it works now, isn't it? I saw the new Ant-Man films. This ties in very slightly, doesn't it, to Are You There, God? So. Yeah. It does not feature the girl from Are You There, God? What's her name? Abby Ryder Fortson. Yeah. But she did play one of the characters from this film 2 films ago. So we watched the third Ant-Man film, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantum Mania.
Wow.
And it's kind of a bit of a mess. Expectations were low, and they were largely met.
Okay.
One of my big problems is it suffers from this trope. Which I call the secret plot, where one of the characters knows some like really important information about the story and the plot, but they won't tell the other characters, and it's not very clear why they won't tell anybody what it is that they know. They're just keeping it quiet for the sake of stringing the story out for 2 hours. So very frustrating. People should just talk to each other. What's also playing at your theatre?
Well, I didn't get to the theatre. I was watching television because there were 2 big series finales this last week. Succession,
right,
was brilliant. It ended exactly the way a series like that should end, and it's sad. I'll probably have to go back and binge all 4 seasons again sometime soon. But really well done. Loved it. Absolute success. And then Ted Lasso, which is sort of a British thing. I don't know. It's filmed over there. I think it's a very American show, but features an English football club. Really did the opposite. It just was not very good. It's, these are things that I've been following for 3 and 4 seasons, going back as many as 5 years, and it was very frustrating because it was just not a good season at all for Ted Lasso, and it did not really end well either. So it was really mostly HBO and Apple TV. I did not get into a theater. I did not see a movie.
How disappointing. Endings are hard, aren't they? Endings are hard.
I think so. But Succession, I think they knew where they were going for years, and just well planned. I felt like Ted Lasso, the first season was probably pretty well planned, but then they were surprised by their success and they could not really maintain it. It was a pretty steady decay to a unsatisfying conclusion, where Succession was just ramping up and took you exactly where it should have. So it was interesting to see. It's like a little case study in how to write a television series or a limited series, and one succeeded. One, can I wordplay with lasso? Was lassoed. You could say lassoed.
Is that? Yeah, that. I'll buy that. That kind of works. It reminds me of the thing you've told me before, where it's just, if you fail to prepare, you should prepare to fail.
Yes, there you go. That's good.
Next time, we are going to be watching Reality, which is a feature film and not just us looking out of the window, comparing it to 3 Days of the Condor, the Robert Redford classic. So,
classic.
A little bit of paranoia.
Yeah.
And a tech thriller. I'm not sure what you call it, but we're going to check those 2 out for next time around. Next week we'll be at the popcorn counter discussing some old nonsense. But 2 weeks' time, come back for Reality versus 3 Days of the Condor.
I'll be there.
In the meantime, buy your microphones from Blue Yeti.
Yeah.
And any other sponsorship opportunities to realcinemaclub@gmail.com. You know where we are.
I just want to throw one thank you out there to Tom Hanks. Thanks, buddy.